The Stanley Cup Final is underway. The Florida Panthers came up short in Game 1, but this promises to be a long series. Armando Velez of Locked On Florida Panthers joins us to talk about what happened in the first game and how things can be different going forward. All that and more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to thank everyone for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. And we are now also available on SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search for Locked On NHL. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Florida Panthers, Armando Velez. And Armando, going through, you got your Heat hat, your Florida Panthers shirt. You are in finals mode all the way through. Little bit disappointing performance in Game 1. What didn't quite click for the Panthers?
Yeah, Gil, I want to thank you so much once again for having me on the show to talk all things Florida Panthers, and it's a great time here in South Florida. And also the Miami Marlins, they swept the Oakland A's this weekend as well. So a great time in this region once again for South Florida sports. But yeah, as far as the Florida Panthers and what went wrong in the game, I mean, really it came down to special teams for the Panthers. Yeah, they got a shorthanded goal for their first goal of the game, but on their power play, the zone entries were just not there for the Panthers. I mean, there's also one power play specifically where the Vegas Golden Knights cleared it 4 times, and the Florida Panthers were not winning their key faceoffs there as well. The faceoffs actually started to tilt in the Panthers' directions about 5 minutes left in the second period, and I mean, look what happened. The Florida Panthers scored right off a faceoff with Anthony Duclair, just less than 30 seconds left in the second period. I mean, and the Florida Panthers, I mean, a few good things is that they added to that tally of goals starting within the first 3 minutes of starting a period and the last 3 minutes of a period. Now that's 18 goals in the postseason for the Florida Panthers in that 3-minute mark for them. So they added at least to that tally. And it was a game going into the third period. I mean, and it kind of broke away. Yeah, that review that happened with the Mark Stone high stick, or was it a high stick? That wasn't the reason why the Florida Panthers lost this game. And I mean, a lot of talk has been how the Vegas Golden Knights have dominated 5-on-5, but in this one specifically, yeah, you'll see a 3-1 goal differential in the as far as the goals, but as far as shot attempts and shots for, the Panthers were there with them. It's just you wish that the Florida Panthers were getting more into the dirty areas in Game 1. A lot of perimeter-based shots, not a lot of opportunities for like give and goes for like a centering feed down low to make Aiden Hill work. There were times where he was kind of being a little ambitious getting out of his net. And look what happened with that big save that he had on Nick Cousins in Game 1, which was incredible. Signs of Braden Holtby of 2018 for the Vegas Golden Knights against the Washington Capitals. But, you know, it was just about the Vegas Golden Knights just taking advantage of their opportunities. And two of the goals against for the Florida Panthers, it was 2 screens. One of them was a double screen that Bobrovsky, the eyes were taken away from him as well on the night as well. So Bob wasn't the problem for the Panthers. I mean, and we saw one thing in Game 1. There was no rest for these Panthers.
As far as the that one big save, which you mentioned, do you think that was deflating for the Panthers? I mean, it was such a unbelievable save when it was made.
Yeah, I was. It was a bit deflating at the time, but then of course the Florida Panthers were tied going into the third period. I mean, you this is a game of inches, and sometimes you think, man, how did that not go in? You think about how much differently it could have been. Yeah, but of course you still had your chances. And I mean, when you also think about with the Vegas Golden Knights, I mean the big top guns of VGK, like a Jack Eichel and an Ivan Barbashev, didn't get on the board on the night. It was the defensemen of Shea Theodore and Zach Whitecloud who were getting in on the scoring as well. So a little bit of a discouraging part in that sense of the game, when it's the blue line that's scoring for the Vegas Golden Knights, when the Florida Panthers, they were second in the NHL this year in blue line scoring. I mean, and we got to talk about the elephant in the room with the scoring of the Vegas Golden Knights. Jonathan Marchessault and Riley Smith are the two guys who scored, with Marchessault on the power play, Riley Smith with the empty net goal against both of them against their former teams as well. And I mean, on that penalty kill, I mean, we also got to consider that Radko Gudas was out for a little bit in that first period, which Brandon Montour was not in a familiar spot where he was on the penalty kill, and just went a little bit too far to his left, leaving Jonathan Marchessault there. And it's just little itty bitty details at the Florida Panthers that I would like to see them get better. But as far as going into game 2, I'm not worried about this team. I mean, the series doesn't really start until someone loses at home. And the Florida Panthers, they went 8 straight of winning on the road. And they were 8-0 when scoring first. Now they're 8-1, but they have proven over and over throughout the postseason that they will not back down, and they will always be in these close hockey games.
Did the fact that 3 misconduct penalties were called against the Panthers, does that concern you at all?
Not at all. The way I think of it is these two teams are getting a feel for each other. Yeah, Bennett and Tkachuk went out for the last few minutes, and of course that when you're down a man for 4 minutes, I mean, with a 4-2 deficit, I mean, the game is over basically at that point. And of course, when you pull the goalie, it's 5-on-5, but with the net empty, so it doesn't give you that much of an opportunity to make something happen as well. But the way I see it is kind of how you approach something at the front 9, kind of like in golf. You're chatting up with your buddies, you're talking to one another. But as the series goes on, we're going to see less scuffles here, and kind of like in major golf, when the two guys on the leaderboard are towards the back 9, you don't see much conversation between the two. And it's kind of like the same thing here with these two. You're going to see that these two are going to be more laser focused, and less of these opportunities of risking going to the box and having your team down based on what is at stake.
Should be a great series. I know you will have it covered every step of the way. Armando, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
They can find me on Twitter at MondoMan12. They can follow the show account on Twitter and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And the show, they can follow it wherever they listen to podcasts: Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, especially because we're booming on that front. And now the SiriusXM app is where you can find the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
All right, Armando, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you as always, Gil.
Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. Well, it's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know all the parts will fit, or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. So get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.